So this episode we're going to talk about state. State is the term used in React to define the information that is held in the web page. So similar to how if we defined a const to hold a value of hello world, the state can do exactly the same as that. So let's try and jump into it and define our first state so we can see what it looks like. So we say const open close brackets my first state, comma, so the second argument is set my first state. And we say that equals react.useState, open close parentheses, and we'll say it equals hello. So now we've just defined our first piece of state. Now this state is called my first state. The way that you update that state is by calling this function, which is called set my first state, and the default value is a string called hello. So let's get rid of slider and checkbox, and below switch we'll input that value my first state. If we save this, we should see hello next to the switch on our web page. So let's look to our input, and here where it says we'll output the console log, we're going to change that to instead say set my first state. So whenever the input changes, it will set the state to be whatever you've typed. So let's save that. Go to our web page. It starts off as hello, but then if we change it to be ABC, so does the state change. 1, 2, 3. So this is really useful to store information that's important to the web page. So for example, if we wanted another use of the state, let's copy this, make a new one, and we'll call this is disabled, and we'll say set is disabled as the function that changes it, and the default value will be false. Now we'll use that const, which is a boolean, in the inputs disabled prop. So by default it's false, so this shouldn't be disabled. Let's save that just to make sure, yeah, we can still type. So now if we look to the switch input, instead of console logging the output, we can use it to set the is disabled state. So now when we toggle that switch, it will change the is disabled from true to false and false to true, and so on and so forth, which in turn will stop us being able to use this input field. So let's save that and give it a go. You see here we can type 1, 2, 3. If we make it disabled, you can no longer type in there. If we enable it again, we can start typing again. And now just to get Typescript involved in these guys, we can add these angle brackets and say the type of this state is a string, and the type of this one is a boolean. Now if we try to change this to anything else, so if the starting value is t, it can't be because it has to be a boolean. And now just for the sake of it, let's do another piece of state that holds an object. So if we call this state person, set person, that'll be an object with a name of string. Default value will be name, I have no name. So let's display that person's name in our web page by saying person.name. And if we save this, we should see I have no name. But at this point, there's nothing changing that state, so this will always be I have no name. So let's put in a button. Again, we'll grab that from Material UI. So what we want the button to do is, once it's clicked, set the name of person to be whatever's in the input box. So we can do that by saying on click rather than on change, because the button is clickable. We don't care about the arguments of the on click, so we'll just do empty parentheses followed by an arrow function, which will then do set person. Now, because person is an object and not just a string, we're going to have to redefine the whole object and say name is equal to whatever's in the input, which is my first state. So now hopefully we should be able to type into input, and then when we click the button, it will change the name of person. So if we go to our web page, we'll see that the button is pretty much invisible. So what we can do is add a child to that button, and the child will be the text inside the button. If we save that, it should be a bit easier to see. And then if we write in here Jim Bob and then click the save button, the person's name is now Jim Bob. So that's most of what you need to know about the state. In the next episode, we'll talk about components in more detail than what we've already seen them.